Do human beings have value? It shouldn't be that interesting of a question, but it's only a 10-minute podcast, so it doesn't have to be that interesting. Hi, I'm Nick. This is 10 Minutes with Nick, and today we're going to talk about intrinsic value, but specifically in people. Now, this is a topic that comes up on the red pill side of the internet quite often. We all know my feelings about red pill internet. They take some correct points and then wrap a bunch of nonsense around it to try and come up with this world philosophy of that men have this sort of weird, frankly, a lot of red pill gets misogynistic, which is misogyny being defined as the hatred of women, misandry being defined as the hatred of men. I would say a lot of individuals in the red pill community are not misogynistic. The overall messaging that comes out of that community is definitely misogynistic. And again, not because some individual points that come out aren't correct, but because the way those points come out and the way they are couched and the way they are phrased and the way they are discussed, particularly with the discussion of women as females rather than as women or as human beings, that is misogyny. You're denigrating and belittling women. It also, those corners of the internet tend to have 30 or 35-year-old men targeting 21 or 22-year-old girls and sort of peppering them with questions that their life experience would have no idea about how to balance out or answer. Now, there have been some interviews with like older women, and as you might imagine, those interviews go nowhere because it's just sort of nobody's backing down on any of the points. But why do I bring up the concept of value today? Because I saw a quote, and that quote said, if you don't know your own value, somebody else will tell you, and it will be less than what you are worth. It's an interesting point to think about. If you don't know your own value, somebody else will tell you. And it won't be, and essentially, it'll be less than what you're worth. Essentially, it won't be accurate. Yes and no. Okay. So let's get one point out of the way right away. Man, woman, straight, gay, transsexual, whatever. Every human being has value. Every human life has value. That is, we know who I am. I'm a Christian. I follow the Bible. That's the one fundamental truth that comes out of the Bible. Well, there are multiple fundamental truths, but the one truth I think we can all agree on is that all human life has value. And, somebody's going to jump up and say like, well, what about the Bible talks about slaves? Yes, the Bible talks about slaves, but in that time, in that part of the world, slaves were people who were being held as slaves were reality. Like that was a very common practice. That was a common practice until the last couple of 100 years. And it's still common in a lot of parts of the world. We don't like it. We don't like to admit it. But human trafficking is a very real thing. There are lots of good movies about human trafficking that try to highlight and try to alert us to the horrors of it. A recent one came out starring a friend of mine. I believe it's called Fugitive. I'll confirm that and put it in the comments. But it's on Tubi, and Tubi's free, so you should go watch it. It's a great movie. But anyways, all human life has value. So let's get that out of the way right now. And it's not a numerical value, meaning that it cannot be calculated. Whoever you are, however you woke up today, you had a bad hair day, you had a good hair day, you're rich, poor, whatever. Your life has value, and your life has a value that cannot be over or understated. It is priceless, and you are priceless in the eyes of your God or lack thereof. It is just fact. My life is not worth more or less than your life. But I'm not talking about the value of your life as a human being here when I talk about value. I'm talking about essentially, this is where things kind of get conflated, right? Your labor can have a value that is different from your value as a human being. I'll say that again. Your labor has a value that is different from your value as a human being. As a human being, you are worthy of love, you are worthy of this, you are worthy of that. But your labor is different. Your labor has a definite calculable value to it. Why is that? Or how do I know that? Well, I know how to throw a football, which means, technically speaking, I can perform the labor of throwing a football. I know the rules of football. Technically speaking, I can perform the labor of playing football. And I'm using a slightly facetious example, but just to make the point. And of course, it'll be in different gradations, but it highlights the point. I can perform the labor of football. I love the Buffalo Bills. Technically speaking, I meet all the criteria. I meet all the criteria for playing in the National Football League. However, I cannot spin a football as well as anybody inside of the National Football League. Pick the worst quarterback in the league. The worst. And I'm not talking about the worst starter. I'm talking about the worst quarterback in the league. Find somebody who's barely clinging to a practice squad. He will throw the football better than I can, than my labor in that regard. It's just a fact. And that is not because he is a better person than me. It is not because he is nicer. It's not because he's worth more as a human being. It is because he is better at throwing a football. That is a market-driven decision. But Bradford Pitt is worth more as an actor right now than I am. The market determines that. If you put me as the lead in a movie and you put Bradford Pitt as the lead in a competing movie, his movie would make more money. And it would make more money regardless of that's a market-driven decision. Like that's the market determines that his movies will be more popular because his labor is worth more at this moment. It won't be forever, but at this moment, his labor is worth more. This is where I think we need to kind of understand that this discussion about value, we're getting really mixed up. SAG recently left the negotiations with the studios because the studios weren't making good counters on the proposals that SAG was putting forward. That is 100% what SAG is supposed to be doing on behalf of actors. They're negotiating the value of the labor of their actors. The problem is, again, and I'm highlighting this again, actors. We can't tie up our value as human beings in the value of our contract. We're never going to get a contract if we do that. Or we're never going to get a contract that addresses all of the concerns because our value as human beings is not determined by the contract. The value of our labor is determined by that, but it's dollars and cents. It's dollars and cents. It's not human value. So if you are disturbed by the fact that the studios rejected SAG's contract proposals, don't be disturbed. It's a business negotiation. Go to the picket lines, strike against the studios, because that's our negotiating power. But remember, we're negotiating for dollars and cents. We're not negotiating for the resolution of existential crises. There's so much other crap going on in the world right now. So much other crap. I talked yesterday about some of the crap going on in the world. And I saw on Instagram today a really good friend of mine who highlighted a different point of view than I had on the Israel-Palestinian crisis going on right now. You know, she's a very smart young woman. She's Persian, and her heart is breaking right now on behalf of her. I don't know if she actually has family in Palestine, but I know she has friends at least. And her heart is breaking for them right now because they are the ones who are going to bear the brunt of what's coming from Israel based on the attacks from Hamas. She and I have never seen eye to eye on political issues. We just haven't. But she is incredibly intelligent, and I can't discount her take on it. And her take and the stuff she posted today is actually driving me to look into it more and come to try and understand it more and just reach out and understand more about the conflict. My opinion hasn't changed. I stand with Israel. Like, that's my opinion hasn't changed on that. But my opinion also hasn't changed that the value of life in Israel is no less and no more than the value of life in Palestine. The value of life in Hamas, I could give a crap about. I separate Hamas entirely from Palestinians. Hamas is a terrorist organization. Like, that's nothing's going to convince me they aren't. Palestinians are not terrorists. Palestinians are people who are trying to live their life. And they've been living their life in the shadow of Israel a long time. But I also don't think everyday Palestinians walked across the border into Israel and carried out the attack. Let's be clear. A Palestinian life is not worth less than an Israeli life. And a lot of Palestinian lives have been lost and will continue to be lost. The staggering nature of the loss of life that's going to happen in a tiny part of the Middle East is not something we can mentally or emotionally understand. And it's going to affect everybody differently, and it's going to affect your friends and family differently. If you have friends who, if you have Jewish friends, they need your support. If you have Palestinian friends, they need your support too. It's a complex issue. Don't get me wrong. People on both sides of this issue, they're hurting. All you can do if you're an outside observer of the issue, first of all, I stand with Israel against Hamas, but I also stand ready to send support to Palestinians whose lives are going to be forever changed by this event. We all probably should have had a better understanding of what was going on over there much earlier than this. Actually, in general, we should have a better understanding of what's going on in the Middle East. Because the value of human life and the value of life is the same, no matter who you are. The value of your labor is a different question. Remember, the SAG negotiation and any job negotiation and any market negotiation has nothing to do with the value of your life as a human being. And it won't affect the value of your life as a human being. Keep things in perspective. And hug all your friends today, no matter who they are, no matter what camp they're from. Just hug them. This is going to get worse before it gets better. And AMPTP, figure your shit out. You need actors. Generative AI is not giving you actors. You need actors. Figure it out. I'm well over my allotted time. We're almost at 15 minutes. I'm Nick. This is 10 Minutes with Nick. Have yourself a great day.